Lian Fan is a research associate with the Humanitarian Policy Group at the Overseas Development Centre. She's also the founder of a NGO which has been looking after Rohingya migrants in the Indonesian province of Aceh. And she joins us now from Bangkok. Lilian, thank you very much for your time. It's hard to get a sense of why this tragedy is unfolding in this way right now. What are your observations?
Well, I have to say that besides the problem of trafficking, one really has to understand that the persecution of the Rohingya in Myanmar is really the root cause of much of these problems. And I think that is one of the things that we need to focus on much more. The situation in Rakhine State, where the Rohingya are from, has not really been improving, and in fact, in many ways, it's getting worse. So we saw, for example, earlier this year, the withdrawal of temporary registration cards that the Rohingya have. They do not have citizenship in Myanmar, but at least they had this form of identification, which was called the temporary registration card. And those were withdrawn earlier this year. There's been a lot of pressure on the Rohingya on every level. I mean, really, the levels of discrimination against them are very systematic. They continue to have severe restrictions on almost every form of everyday life, including restrictions on movement, which means that they don't really have access to livelihoods and also to basic services such as healthcare and education. So I think that we need to understand this problem as first and foremost a refugee problem, and then secondly a trafficking problem, because the fact that you have so many people who are desperate to leave, that, of course, makes them easy prey to fall into the hands of traffickers.
And so I guess that explains your frustration at the way it was handled at the recent meeting in Bangkok in terms of really the trafficking being the major focus.
Absolutely. I think that the meeting in Bangkok was a chance actually for countries in the region to send a very strong message to Myanmar to say that it should not be able to get away with the treatment of the Rohingya in the kind of way that it has been, right? I mean, there's been an incredible burden that the neighboring countries have now had to face. This is not the first time. This has been going on for decades. You actually have more than 150,000 Rohingya currently in Malaysia, and we see the kinds of situations that they get into. I mean, these awful jungle camps that have developed, and of course, there's complicity at some level as well from officials within both the Thai government and the Malaysian government. But at the same time, this is something which the first responsibility lies with Myanmar to be able to say to the region that it is holding to account the responsibility to improve the situation for the Rohingya, and that it's going to work with the region to be able to do that. And that wasn't really the message that was coming out of the meeting in Bangkok, unfortunately.
Indeed, there seemed to be much more than silence coming from the leadership in Myanmar. Tell us about the experiences. What did you see in your visits to, of course, Rakhine State, and of course the work that you're doing in Aceh?
Well, in Rakhine State, firstly, the last time I was there was about 2 months ago, and I'm due to go again at the end of the month. There are people who've been living now in temporary camps for close to 3 years. There was violence in 2012, which displaced up to 140,000 people, and those camps are currently, they're pretty much like open-air prisons, if you like. And, there's a sense of real segregation that's set in, a kind of an apartheid, if you like. And it's not just Rohingya in these camps, it's also Rakhine Buddhists. And the situation is desperate for everyone, but it's even more desperate for the Rohingya Muslims because of the statelessness, status that they have in Myanmar. So there's much more of an incentive for them to leave, and they then are already incredibly poor. They really have very, very little, but they are putting themselves into debt, just to be able to leave these camps through the smuggling networks. I was really moved by the visits that I've made to Aceh in the last few weeks. It's in fact a month now since the first boat of refugees and Bangladeshi migrants as well was rescued in Aceh. So there have been 3 boats that were rescued on the 10th of May, the 15th of May, and the 20th of May. all by Achinese fishermen, very courageous, who really went out to sea and found these people in desperate need and took it upon themselves to bring people back in, these starving refugees and migrants, and have been taking care of them with incredible generosity and a sense that of really deep humanity, which I think puts the rest of the region to shame, actually, to see that, you know, we all failed, in fact, the governments in this region and even the international organizations to actually launch an effective search and rescue. And the only people who really were able to do that were the Achinese fishermen.
Yes, indeed. Just briefly, because many Rohingyas identify as Malaysian, what do you see as the solution? Where would they find a home?
Well, I mean, ultimately, the situation in Rakhine State needs to be resolved. The citizenship issue in Rakhine State needs to be resolved, in Myanmar, needs to be resolved, and there has to be an end to the statelessness that the Rohingya are facing. In the meantime, there, of course, have to be temporary solutions that are sought, and that would involve countries in the region, such as Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand. But that can't be done in isolation to trying to really have some milestones in place to actually track progress that's being made inside Myanmar itself. And I think that what's lacking right now is that, you know, Myanmar claims that it is making some progress on some issues, and I do think that they are trying very hard in some respects. I mean, they're trying to, you know, become a little bit better on things like health service delivery, but it's clearly not enough. And there isn't really a link to the regional actors, whereby the regional actors can actually monitor what's going on inside Rakhine State and see some evidence of the will to try to improve things, and have some confidence that even if they are hosting refugees temporarily, there will be a way to repatriate them eventually at such a time when the situation in Myanmar permits.
Lilian, thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you, Debbie.